Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip over there. For this review then we are going to have a look at a beer from a brewery that has featured on the channel once before, albeit that was as part of a collaboration review, so I'm very curious to do my first dedicated review for this brewery today. And this is a style of beer that I very much enjoy, and I think it's fair to say that this brewery are quite a recognisable craft beer brand these days. You can find them in many good beer shops across the continent, and in the Netherlands they are quite quite widely distributed actually. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. So for this review then we are going to go to Haarlem, out to the west of Amsterdam, and we're going to have a look at another beer involving Brouwerij Het Uiltje. Like I said, my first dedicated review to this brewery. So for this one we're having a taste of the Me, Myself and IPA. This one comes in at 7% ABV, and it is a West Coast style IPA apparently. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out, and hopefully it turns out to be another very interesting beer. This was one that Thomas Hoendam actually recommended for me when we were in his local jumbo supermarket. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out, and definitely nice to do my first dedicated review for Brouwerij Het Uiltje as well. I've seen their beers around quite a lot, but as I say, I've just never got around to doing a dedicated review for them until now. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So yeah, since this is a Dutch beer review as well, a massive shout out to my friends in the Dutch Craft Beer Collective. I'm kind of an honorary member of that. But yeah, we have Thomas Hoendam. We have Remy Den Doop, who is Beer Geek Holland. We have Herben Caspers, who is Dutch Beer Geek, and then we also have Douglas Hesselmans, who is Beers with Douglas. All four of these guys have very nice channels. They all do a few reviews in English these days, but I would recommend that you check out the links to the Dutch Craft Beer Collective in the video description below, because there you can get access to all four of their channels, their Instagrams, their Facebook feeds, and all of these kind of things. So do go and check them out, show them some love if you're more interested, if you are very interested, sorry, in the Dutch craft beer scene. They've got some really interesting reviews and other activities going on down there, and they're all very nice guys. You will see them feature on my channel over the next little while. They're quite often involved in our live stream activities and things like that. So yeah, definitely cool to always give these guys a shout out on the Dutch beer reviews. So yeah, as I said, very curious to see how this one turns out. A 7% West Coast IPA, one of my favourite styles, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's see how we go. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future involving Brouwerij Het Uiltje. Like I said, this is my first dedicated review to this brewery, and hopefully we can add more over the next little while. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I have a lot of beers that I brought back with me. Hopefully we can continue to add to that regularly over the coming months and years, and I'm sure we will do that. But yeah, as always, please do feel free to get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Het Uiltje then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, Brouwerij Het Uiltje are from Haarlem in the Netherlands to the west of Amsterdam. Kind of right in the middle of the country actually, on the west coast, but the company, it was founded by Robert Uiljeman, and the brewery name apparently means little owl, hence the logo that these guys have, and it's derived from Robert's name itself. But they started brewing back in 2012, and before that Robert had been homebrewing for around a year and a half, and he basically started homebrewing because he was tired of lagers and Belgian style beers, and he wanted to brew more kind of American style things. So over the following years he continued to build up his clientele, build up more recipes and things like that, and then later on in 2015 they invested in a new brewery after securing financing, and you can find this on Beingeveg in the northeastern part of the city. But they started brewing there in September of 2016, and this brewery was originally equipped with a 4-vessel 40 hectolitre system along with 11 fermentation vessels, and this has been further expanded over the years. They also have a barrel room that has over 300 different barrels for their barrel aging project. Apparently there's some really good beers come out of that, and they've also got a small 300 litre pilot brewing system as well for lots of experimentations. But they used to run a tap room at the brewery, but these days it is just tours and takeaway and stuff like that they're offering from the brewery, from what I understand. But obviously that's on hold because of the whole COVID-19 situation at the moment, but surely that will open up fairly soon. I would think we're getting close to vaccines and stuff being released, thankfully. But they also have a beer in Zielstraat in the centre of Haarlem, which has around 30 taps, and this also serves pizza and does barbecue food as well. And just down the street, I think at number 6, I think this is number 6, and then the tap room is number 18, but they've also got a coffee and bottle shop there as well actually, so you can go and check both of those out. But the current head brewer at Het Uiltje is Marco Michelitz, and as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 260 different kinds of beer. So that is, if you think that these guys started brewing in 2016, that's actually more than one beer a week, so that is pretty damn impressive actually. These guys, as you can see, are very, very prolific. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Brouwerij Het Uiltje for the moment. Basically the Little Owl Brewery, if you want to translate it into English, and you can see that on their artwork. But yeah, as I say, quite a well-respected craft beer brand in the Netherlands these days. You can get them, at least one or two of their beers, in the local supermarkets in the Netherlands, like Jumbo and things like that. So yeah, definitely worth picking up a couple of these if you get the chance. And this is the one that, as I say, that Thomas Houdendam from Thomas Open recommended that I try, and it caught my eye because it was a West Coast IPA, of course. So yeah, as I say, if you want to learn more about Brouwerij Het Uiltje, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'm very, very curious to see how it turns out. So just a little quick look at the artwork then. There you can see the Het Uiltje, the little owl. On the front there you can also see it says Haarlem. On the label, I'm probably not putting the right stress on that, Haarlem, I guess. But there you can see on the back, me, myself, an IPA, 7% West Coast IPA. This one, it says, note to drinker: this IPA, drink this IPA as fresh as possible and make sure it's stored in a cool, dry place. So I think, yeah, I think it would be kind of fairly fresh actually. But I think, yeah, I've had it maybe about a month. I've made home about a month now, so yeah, it will have been in my fridge about a month. But yeah, it says it's a shockingly narcissistic IPA. As I said, 7% West Coast IPA. The hops in this one apparently are Mosaic, Simcoe, Amarillo and Chinook. So yeah, this one I think should be pretty damn good. You can see there is the Het Uiltje bottle cap on this one, and we will be putting that in with the ones that we are planning to keep. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. And I don't think I paid all that much for this beer, maybe about €2.50 or something like that, which for a 7% West Coast IPA in the Netherlands, which is a fairly expensive country. I don't think it's quite as expensive as up here in Scandinavia, although I think their craft beer shops down there are a little bit more expensive than Systembolaget, which is understandable, private market and all of this. But yeah, €2.50 for a kind of 7% West Coast IPA. I have to say, that is not something to be sniffed at. So yeah, that is pretty good. As you can see, the camera hates the artwork on this one. It always does this with these kind of shiny labels, so do excuse that. But yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from a West Coast IPA, this one has poured a lovely, rich amber colour. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera, to be honest with you. But you can see that the beer does have that sort of natural haze thing to it, rather than the sort of oaty and wheaty haze that you're going to get out of a New England IPA. You can see that when this beer poured, it had about a half finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. That has just faded away to be a very thin kind of wispy foamy layer, and it's leaving a nice kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the edge of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty nice. And this, to be honest, is what you would expect of a West Coast IPA. I would say that it's one of the lighter amber colours that I've come across, you will find them being a little bit more kind of blood orangey and things like that, depending on what beer and brewery and stuff like that it is. But remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on two things: one, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of the boil. The longer that you boil the beer, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you will get a darker colour out of it. Usually IPAs, I think most of them tend to go for a sort of 90-minute boil actually. So yeah, I'm guessing with this beer that Chinook will probably have been used as the bittering hop, whereas the Mosaic, the Simcoe, and I think it was the what was the other one? Was it Amarillo? Sorry, yeah, Amarillo was the other one. Those will have been used probably as the aroma hops. So yeah, we know that Mosaic has some lovely tangerine oranges to it. Amarillo's got a more oily orangey character. Simcoe's a more kind of oily passion fruit, and Chinook is that big beast bittering hop with a bit of dark grapefruit. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a West Coast IPA, this one. A little bit hazier than some of the ones that I've come across, right enough. But yeah, it should be quite an interesting beer, this. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Very curious about this beer, like I said. Ooh, that does smell quite nice. You can tell that it's not at its immediately best freshness. You can tell that it's about a month, sort of 6 weeks old, but it's not such a big deal, I wouldn't think. Any good beer, I think, can hold up for that sort of time and still come across as quite nice within that period. And this one was bought in a supermarket rather than a specialist craft beer store, of course. So yeah, remember that as well. But yeah, the aroma coming off of this one is very nice, and it's right up my street as well. If you've watched my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I'm a sucker for these West Coasty IPAs, especially the ones that have got the orangey notes in them. So Mosaic and Amarillo I always will enjoy. But straight away with this beer, you do get that nice kind of caramelly, biscuity malt base out of this one. So you can smell that kind of nice sort of white bready, bread crusty base to the beer. You've definitely got a bit of a sweeter kind of caramelly note in there, and you can get a little bit more of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing out of it. Other than that, there's not too much to report about the malty side of this beer, but as I've said to you before, when it comes to West Coast IPAs, you can get the ones that are, really quite smooth and bready leaning, such as this one, sort of like Pliny the Elder, which we reviewed quite recently, and you will also get the ones that are more kind of oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. It really just depends on the brewery, if you like, and this one does strike me as being a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, if you like the kind of Pliny the Elder, actually. So that's an interesting point to make about this one. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the malty side of the beer. But the hoppy side of the beer comes across very, very nicely as well, and again, it's sort of what you would expect. So you can smell a little bit of that. You do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one, and I would suggest that it's the Mosaic that's giving you the earthiness, but you get a good little bit of a kind of darker piney note to the beer. But I would say that isn't as prominent as the floral aromaticity in this one. I actually find this beer to be quite bright and quite floral and aromatic. Maybe that will be a bit different in the flavour. Right enough, but yeah, you also get some nice lighter grassy notes out of the beer. So the green side of the hops, to be honest, are kind of what you would expect. The green side of this beer comes across really nice and gives the beer just a good little bit of freshness. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, let's have a little look at that. So yeah, hoppy side of the beer then, or the fruity side of things I should say, sorry. I mean, straight away for me, it's a big mix of oily, orangey sort of things. You do get a little bit of a kind of oily passion fruity sort of thing from the Simcoe. I don't get so much grapefruit, which you might sometimes get from the Chinook. Sometimes you can get a bit of that darker grapefruit in there, but you do get the nice kind of oily Simcoe. As I've told you before, Simcoe's a really interesting hop because it behaves differently in different IPAs. In a New England one, it comes across as very soft and very juicy. In a West Coast IPA with a more caramelly malt base, it's got a distinctly more oily character. Then in the black IPAs, it gives you some really interesting kind of red fruity sort of things. So just worth bearing in mind with this beer, actually, when you think about Simcoe. So you do get some of that nice, you do get a little bit of that nice kind of oily passion fruity note there, but it also gives a little bit of a kind of apricot-y jam type impression, which is quite interesting. So a little bit of that sort of dried apricot-y note comes off as well. But you also get a lovely big oily orangey citrusy hit out of this one. Sorry about the edit there, guys. Memory card being a pain again. But as I was saying with this, the fruity side of this beer is really interesting. On the orangey side of things, you've got that more oily Amarillo underneath, but you get the kind of juicier, kind of tangerine notes from the Mosaic kind of sitting on top of that. But I think the tangerine almost gives you the impression of that sort of dried, fruity, jammy type quality to the beer as well. So the fruity side of this beer for me gets a big thumbs up. I love these big orangey leaning IPAs, and you know, this one just really, aroma wise, ticks all the boxes for me. So yeah, very, very curious to see how this beer turns out. So yeah, as I say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck in, but we're going to have a taste of this beer now and see how we go. This one is the Me, Myself and IPA, a 7% West Coast IPA from Brouwerij Het Uiltje, the Little Owl Brewery in Haarlem in the Netherlands. Let's get stuck into this one. Slanje, skål, proost. Yeah, that's actually pretty nice, I have to say. It's not as high in bitterness as I would expect of a West Coast IPA. This one does come across as if the bitterness might have dropped out of it, but we'll see if it builds up a little bit more in the aftertaste, because sometimes they can do that. But I do wonder, the IBUs of this one, it strikes me as being a little bit lower, but the beer itself, I know it isn't too old. It isn't too old actually. So I don't think that would be an issue. I think this might just be a kind of slightly lower bitterness West Coast IPA, and we have been noticing that trend with these, that recently, you know, a lot of the West Coast IPAs, they have been toning the bitterness of them down just a little bit. So yeah, that's definitely a point to note about this one. But in terms of its flavour profile, it is really pretty damn nice. Again, it ticks the boxes for me. So yeah, I'm going to say thumbs up to Brouwerij Het Uiltje for this one. But as I say, I'm a sucker for these big oily orangey IPAs, so this is one that I am going to like, of course. In fairness, you do get a wee bit of bitterness out of this one. You do get a wee bit of bitterness out of this one in the beginning, but then I think it really smooths out quite nicely. But yeah, the flavour composition of this one, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one for you here then. This is a very straight shooting West Coast IPA. I mean, in terms of the aroma, there wasn't really anything that was really out there and surprising, and in terms of the flavour, I'd say the same, but it's just really well crafted. And I mean, you can't really ask for much more these days, to be honest. There's so many IPAs on the market, you can just ask that you get a really well crafted beer, and I think we've got that here. But yeah, in the middle of your palate then, you can feel that nice sort of pale malty base that blankets the middle of your tongue. If you go towards the back third of your palate, you do have a nice little bit of a more kind of graininess in there. You get a little bit of a bread crusty quality coming out of it as well on the back third of your palate, but yeah, you can feel the breadiness just thickens up on that back third of the palate there. So yeah, nice white bready base, a little bit more of a kind of brown bready wholemealy thing on the back third of the palate, like I said. And the breadiness just thickens up, but as you move further forward on that front third of your palate, and when you reach the middle third of your tongue, you can feel there's a nice sort of just oily part on the beer sitting on top of that breadiness. That's where you're getting the more kind of biscuity, sort of caramelly type flavours out of this one. But yeah, I would stick with what I was thinking earlier from the aroma, that this beer is a little bit more along the lines of a kind of more lightly bready and kind of biscuity, caramelly, sort of, yeah, more kind of bready and biscuity leaning West Coast IPA. This one, it is a little bit more like Pliny the Elder, for example, than it is Sierra Nevada Torpedo. Those are my sort of two classic, those are the two extremes, I think, of the West Coast IPAs, in my opinion. Or the two ends of the spectrum, I guess I should say. But yeah, this one I think is nice. So if you go into the very centre of your palate, you've got a nice sweet kind of caramelly note to it there, and as you move further out from the centre of the palate, you will get a little bit more of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. And again, it just comes across as really nice. It's very straight up. It's a little bit old school, and yeah, it does the job, this beer. It really has a nice malty profile to it. So yeah, if you like a more kind of bready, biscuity West Coast IPA, this one will have what you're looking for. So yeah, thumbs up on the malt base of this one. I have to say I quite like this, and I think Pliny the Elder has really made me appreciate the more bready side of the West Coast IPA spectrum, to be honest. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer now. I don't think there's too much more to say about the malty side of this one, except that it does get a wee touch grainier the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, back corners of the palate, there is a wee hint of earthiness out of this one. Chinook is going to give you a little bit of that, but Mosaic will do the same. As you come further forward along the sides of the palate, you can detect that sort of dank piney resin note from the Chinook forming the base of the beer, but I think the further you go into the aftertaste, it does become a little bit more floral and aromatic, but you do get a little bit more of that kind of darker, danky, piney sort of thing out of this one. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, the beer is distinctly lighter and more grassy in my mind, and yeah, it just, as I say, it just goes together really quite nicely. So yeah, I do like how this whole thing sort of pieces together. It's the fruity side of this beer again, it is kind of quite nice. This is one of these beers that's actually very comparable to the Aroma, to be honest with you. It gives you pretty much what you would expect based on the Aroma, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. As I always say, half the experience of craft beer and whiskey and stuff is the Aroma. But yeah, on the front third of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a nice kind of, you do get a wee touch of grapefruit there, but I would say very quickly it becomes a more oily passion fruity note. That's your Simcoe coming out, and as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, the front sixth of your tongue, if you want to be pernickety, this is when you get the Mosaic and the Amarillo. So you can feel the Amarillo comes out further forward, I think, and it's more it's a more kind of oily character, if you like, but then the mosaic-y flavours, the slightly lighter, more juicy mosaic-y flavours, are kind of sitting on top of the Amarillo things like this. So yeah, Amarillo is going to give you the more oily orange to the beer, whereas the Mosaic gives you the slightly more juicy side of the orange. So yeah, I really like, as I say, how this one kind of how this one does its thing. I really like how this all goes together. So thumbs up to Brouwerij Het Uiltje once again. I think the fruity side of this beer is quite nice. The thing that you'll notice with this one, the further you go into the aftertaste, it does get a little bit more of a kind of drier, you do get a little bit of that dry sort of, just that kind of dry, like almost jammy sort of, it's the same sort of mouthfeel you get from, you know, like dried apricots and fruit. It does have a little bit of that dried kind of jammy sort of vibe to the fruity side of the beer the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, I like that about this beer. It's very much a straight shooter. Passion fruit, tangerines, oranges, for me, that's it. You might get a wee tiny hint of like pineapple or something out of it because of those dried fruity vibes that the beer gives off. But yeah, I find this one to be a very straight shooting West Coast IPA in my mind, and I like it. You know, I really like this one. I'd be curious to try it on tap at the Het Uiltje bar in Haarlem, so maybe we can do that at some point. It'd be cool to set up a Meet the Brewery segment with Robert Uleman at some point, so maybe we can do that in the Netherlands at some stage. I need to get down there for one of the beer festivals or something and, you know, film a little bit with some of the different brewers and things. That's definitely something that I want to do with the guys in the Dutch Beer Collective, but we'll see about that in the future. But yeah, solid West Coast IPA this one, and definitely a bit lower in its bitterness. So on that note, we should talk about the mouthfeel now. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer, I'd say that it's quite, you know, it's straight in the middle. It's mid-bodied, the carbonation is quite smooth. It's got a good wetness to the mouthfeel, but again, it's quite slick. It's definitely not the most oily of West Coast IPAs that you're going to come across, but then we would reserve that for the more caramelly end of the spectrum, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. As I say, this one's more of a kind of Pliny the Elder, bready, biscuity type IPA, so you do expect these to be a little bit more slightly slick and smooth, if that makes sense. But yeah, in terms of hoppy bitterness with this beer, I think this one is maybe about 50 or 60 IBUs. Usually you would expect these beers back in the day to have been like 80 IBUs. So this one, it does strike me as if maybe the bitterness has been toned down a little bit in this one. Maybe they're adding less early edition Chinook or something like this compared to what they used to. I'd be curious to know about that. If some of you have been drinking this beer over the years, let me know about that in the comment section below. But yeah, I think this is a sort of 50, maybe 60 IBU West Coast IPA, which is lower than what we were accustomed to, probably just to accommodate the drinkers who've got into craft beer on the basis of New England IPAs. It's quite common these days, to be honest with you. So it does have a little bit of bitterness, which you would want, but yeah, not as much as you would, as the kind of old school nerds like me would maybe want. So we'll say that about the beer. It could benefit from just a little bit more bitterness in my mind. But yeah, malt based, like I said, lovely and smooth, nice little bit of sweetness to it in my mind. And you've also got some nice kind of juicy fruits in there. It's got a nice little mix of a juicy and oily side of things, but then you've got a wee bit of a kind of dried fruity character comes off it later in the aftertaste as well. But yeah, it comes across like a very nice beer, this one. So Brouwerij Het Uiltje get a big thumb up for me in this one. I'd be curious to try a few more other beers, so I need to see what else they've got. Maybe they've got a Scotch ale. We should try a Scotch ale. There are one or two other IPAs that are fairly widely available from these guys in the cans and stuff, but as I say, this is the one that we came across in the supermarket, and Thomas told me out of the ones that they had, this is the one that he would recommend, and it was West Coast as well, so I love a good West Coaster, so here we are. But yeah, this one was really nice to review. I was really glad to be able to do my first dedicated review to Brouwerij Het Uiltje as well, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed this one and enjoyed another Dutch beer review. You will see many more Dutch beers to come over the next little while. I think we've still got about 14 or 15 Dutch beers to look at still that I brought back with me, so yeah, it's always a good thing. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brouwerij Het Uiltje as well. The next one we review will actually be a neighbour brewery to this. We're going to have a look at something from Jopen next on the channel. That will be the next Dutch beer that you see appear, and these guys are also from Haarlem, just down the street literally from these guys. So yeah, you can look forward to that and many more Dutch beer reviews to come. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. This was the Me, Myself and IPA, a 7% West Coast IPA from Brouwerij Het Uiltje in the northeastern part of Haarlem in the Netherlands. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slanje, Skål, Prost, and make sure you check out my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective. Slanje.